Well, the Bucs are off to a red start season, 3-1 on the year. A lot of that has to do with the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. And joining me to discuss, Ira Kaufman, who covers Tampa Bay closely. Ira, what has impressed you most about the way Baker Mayfield has played so far this season?
The fact that he hasn't been making many mistakes. That was the knock on Mayfield. After his good season in 2020, things fell apart. He got hurt in 2021. He tried to play through it, and then last year was a total disaster. People thought that he was careless with the ball, tried to throw into too many tight windows. Carolyn, look at this. After 4 Buck games, they're +7 in turnover differential. It's tied with the Niners for the league lead. Mayfield's a big part of that. The one thing that has shocked me, quite frankly, and we didn't see Mayfield play a lot, Buck fans and people in Tampa, before this season. The Browns weren't on TV a lot. The one thing that shocked me, I knew he wasn't Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts in terms of, mobility. But when guys are coming through, Carolyn, and they're breaking free, he's like dodging the first guy. He's got that little pocket awareness that you can't teach. Brady was always great at that. And he buys himself a little time, and the results have been very impressive.
Him being able to limit mistakes, limit turnovers, things that have been costly in the past, is that credit squarely on him? Is there anybody else that you sort of point towards for why this has been able to come together so quickly?
Well, they got a new offensive coordinator in Dave Canales. He spent 13 years with Pete Carroll in Seattle. And Canales has gone a long way in calming down Mayfield, telling him he doesn't have to win the game. He's got a good defense. He's got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Trust your guys, but don't overdo it. Take what the defense gives you. Everybody says it, Carolyn. He said it yesterday. I mean, I was at One Buck Place yesterday. And Todd Bowles, who is a conservative defensive coach who wants to rely on defense, keep the game close, and win it in the fourth quarter. And right now, that's what they're doing, although I got to admit, this is a tough Detroit team coming to town on Sunday.
Well, let's have you preview this matchup. You mentioned Detroit coming in with a similar winning record. What do you think the difference is going to be? How do you preview this meeting between these two?
I got to tell you, I am now sold on the Lions. Not to make it to the NFC title game, because I think everybody wants to see the Niners and the Eagles. I think that could be a titanic clash in January. But they've won 12 out of 15 games, Detroit. So this is not a flash in the pan. They're believing in what Dan Campbell is preaching. And they got a good running game. You can't run against them. I think the difference in the game is the Bucs can't run the ball. They're not very good, 3 yards a carry. Detroit's got one of the best rushing defenses. So what does that mean? Well, instead of throwing 31 passes, Carolyn, that's what Mayfield's averaging. By the way, Tom Brady averaged 44 or 45. That's a big difference. Big difference. So Canales has been patient with a run game that has not been particularly productive. But in the end, I think Sunday afternoon they're going to have to throw the ball 35, 40 times. And here comes Aiden Hutchinson. The guy's a monster. He's just a monster. They move him all over the place. He's his second year in the league. I think the difference is they're going to get to Mayfield on Sunday. Just like the Eagles, Carolyn, when they played the Eagles on that Monday night game, Philly's defense was just too strong. They didn't respect the play action, and I think that's going to be the case on Sunday.
You mentioned Mayfield's pocket presence surprising you a little bit, and maybe his mobility surprising you a little bit. How much more comfortable is he in a situation where he needs to make something happen or hand the ball off? Do you anticipate this to be a challenge against the Lions, that he's going to have to air it out maybe more than he's comfortable doing?
Well, if Mike Evans is healthy and he got hurt a little bit in New Orleans, and that's where the early bye week, you never want an early bye week, but it didn't come at a bad time for the Bucs because Evans looks like he's going to be healthy this week, and when you got him and Godwin, even though Detroit's got a good defense, I think Mayfield feels he can make plays. He can make plays against anybody. New Orleans has a good defense. They just, obliterated New England, albeit New England's not very good, but 34-0's impressive. And the Bucs scored 26 points at the Superdome. So it's not like this offense doesn't have weapons, but they got to get this running game going because sooner or later Mayfield's old habits might pop up, and this is the game it might come.
Just quickly, because you mentioned New England and the terrible season that they're having, I mean, the narrative coming out of Boston that he's a terrible coach all of a sudden and needs to be fired. What do you make of people calling for him to resign or be fired?
My problem in Foxborough, Carolyn, is very simple. He didn't forget how to coach. If he leaves New England, somebody's going to scoop him up in a New York minute. The problem is they haven't drafted well. They just haven't drafted well. They don't get impact players. Although this Christian Gonzalez, the guy that's hurt, the cornerback, I think he's going to be good. But, the last 7 or 8 years, and Belichick's got nobody to blame. Nobody in personnel. He's in charge. He's in control. So, Carolyn, if they go 4-13, I think Kraft has to have a conversation. I don't think it's going to go well. And he might say, well, I think we're going to bring in a general manager. We want you to stay as the coach. I don't think Belichick's going to accept that. I think that is going to be signal the end of him in Foxborough. But again, he's chasing down Don Shula. He's close. And, that has cachet just in and of itself. He'll be taken very quickly. But, his legacy has taken a little bit of a hit, Carolyn, because his overall record without Tom Brady, it's sub 500. Sub 500.
It's definitely fuel to the fire for those who are squarely on the side of it was all Tom Brady and wasn't Bill Belichick. But it's just fascinating to watch this play out and have so many people sort of immediately be calling for his removal. Just back to Bucs Lions and the job that Todd Bowles has done. What should we take from these last couple of years with him at the helm? Where does he, I know you mentioned his defensive prowess, which of course everybody knows about, but where else does he really make an impact?
Well, the big difference, Carolyn, to me is he had a full off season. Last year he got the job in late March. It was too late to make any staff changes. Had he wanted to change some of Bruce Arians' coaching staff, that was very awkward getting a job like that a month before the draft. So even though he knew the players, it was awkward. This time around, and I think he knew his job was on the line, Carolyn, and why wouldn't it be? His last 3 years in New York, losing seasons. Last year, 8-9. Even though he won the division, they went 8-10, including the playoff game, with Tom Brady. That doesn't speak well for Todd Bowles' resume, even though, you give him the division title because it was a terrible division. So, tremendous sense of urgency for Bowles this year. What does he do? He fires Byron Leftwich. Now, Carolyn, if you were in Tampa for the last year, you'd know Leftwich was the guy that took all the slings and arrows from Buck Nation last year. The offense was terrible. 18 points a game with Tom Brady taking all the snaps. That doesn't happen. So he brought in Canales, and it's his hand-picked guy, and Canales has instituted a more creative offense. They're in motion a little bit. Everybody knew where Brady was going to be. Mayfield's rolling out right. He's rolling out left. They're doing some things, screen passes, things we hadn't seen under Brady because Mayfield's a little bit of a different quarterback. And this is Todd Bowles' team. This is his team. He had a big influence in the draft, which he didn't maybe a year ago. And if he's going down, Carolyn, he's going down swinging. And right now, he's looking good at the quarter pole at 3-1.
I was going to say right now he's landing a couple of those punches with a more dynamic offense, and Baker Mayfield looking really impressive so far. What do you think is possible ultimately for Tampa with the way that they've looked? And will this Lions game be a truer litmus test than maybe what we've seen so far?
Well, to an extent. They had their test against the Eagles, and there's no shame in losing to the Eagles. There isn't. Even though it was a home game, national TV. Philly's a better team, Carolyn. I mean, they're just better. Detroit, I don't think, is in Philadelphia's class, but they're good. They are good. This is another statement game for the Bucs because they haven't beaten a team that had a winning record at the time they played them. New Orleans is now 3-2, but they were 2-2 when the Bucs played them. Minnesota has been a disaster. The Bears were winless till last week. So there are a lot of Buck skeptics out there, and it's understandable, very understandable. But if they go out and win and go to 4-1, and they got Atlanta coming in at home, they should win that game, and that's 5-1. It gives them a cushion, Carolyn, because they got to go to Buffalo, they got to go to San Francisco, they go to Houston. Carolyn, I thought that game was a gimme about a month ago, and the Texans are very competitive with a heck of a rookie quarterback. So the ceiling is they're not competing for the Super Bowl. Nobody at One Buck Place is going to acknowledge that, but they're not. But I think they're going to win the division again. And does that say as much about the NFC South as it does about the Bucks? Yes, it does. But a division champion and a home game, playoffs, is nothing to be sneezed about. And I think it'll be enough, Carolyn, to save Bowles' job.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, even though the division might be a little weaker than some of the others that we see out there, still a division title and making at least a decent run into the playoffs. That, in your opinion, is enough to give Todd Bowles another chance to continue to build on what he's doing in Tampa?
Carolyn, unless they have another debacle like the Dallas game, playoff game last year at home, that was just awful. Left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Todd Brady's last game in the NFL. And that put Bowles definitely on notice. But, if you go back-to-back with division titles, like you said, no matter how bad the division is, and then you're going to fire somebody, you better replace them with somebody really good. And what's interesting, Carolyn, I think, this draft looks very much a quarterback-rich draft in 24. So the common thinking was, well, if the Bucks do like the Vegas, insiders think they are, and go 6-11, and Mayfield's not very good, they are going to be in those quarterback sweepstakes. Caleb Williams, Drake May, whoever you want to name. And now with this 3-1 start, nobody's talking about that. Buck fans are not looking ahead to the 2024 draft. Things can change. You know that. Things can change. It's only 4 games. But right now, Mayfield's got a chance to be the long-term answer in Tampa. Who would have thought that?
Not very many people, Ira. How many games do you think he needs to win to give Bucs Nation enough confidence that they might want to, look elsewhere in the draft and give him a chance to be the guy?
I think 9. I think 9's the magic number. 8 and 9, like you said, with a division title, it's still not impressive. It's just not. You don't want to be one of those sub-500 teams that makes the playoffs and probably go nowhere. 9 and 8, I think, saves Bowles and gives Mayfield a fresh start for 2024.
And do you think that one of those wins is going to come this weekend? Can they beat the Lions, or do you expect this to be a rough game?
I think it'll be a very rough game, even though they've got the extra week of rest. I understand that. The Lions are surging. Carolyn, the one game they lost, I think, was an overtime game to Seattle. They could easily be 5-0. I think Detroit's got too much up front on both sides of the ball. The Lions are favored by 3 on the road. I think Detroit's going to win.
What are your impressions of Dallas this year? How good do you think the Cowboys actually are?
I got a bad feeling, and I think Dallas fans shared some of it last week. It was Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And there's Jerry Jones, Carolyn. He can't help himself. He just can't stop. And this is, going into the big San Francisco Sunday night game, all eyes on the game, and he starts talking. Instead of letting Mike McCarthy set the agenda and the tone for the week, Jerry's done this forever since he purchased the Cowboys in '89. And what did that do? It just ramped up the pressure on his own team. This is a huge game. It's a statement game, and then they don't show up in San Francisco. Carolyn, what are we to conclude? They're just not as good as the Niners. They're just not. And John Lynch, my man here in Tampa, who I made the speech to get him in the Hall of Fame. It took 8 years, Carolyn, 8 straight years to get John Lynch that gold jacket, but it happened. And he's done a fantastic job, and I'll tell you why. That Trey Lance situation, usually when you screw up on a quarterback in the top 5, you're done for about 3 years. It just sets you back. It's very difficult. Not only did he take Trey Lance, but he gave up a lot of assets to get Trey Lance. And now he comes up with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, right, Carolyn? And they're loaded. And then he makes the trade for McCaffrey. Anybody could have made that deal, but they didn't, and he did. And he's the focal point of that offense. They got a great defense. I just think it's a real anomaly that you could overcome that debacle of Trey Lance and be right there. It's a testament to the organization.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well said. And it's incredible to watch them play. I mean, they are just so talented, and McCaffrey just adds this whole other dynamic. In Dallas, it's interesting you mentioned Jerry Jones, and you said he can't help himself, and I think it's true. That is who Jerry Jones is. I don't see him pivoting anytime soon on the back half of this as he kind of rides out into the sunset and deviating from what's been his plan all along, which is to call all the shots. I mean, how detrimental is that when you're trying to get your footing, especially after a blowout loss?
Well, Carolyn, the proof is that, since 1995, Dallas hasn't done really a lot. They just haven't. They've been competitive the last few years. He's always going to be the face of the franchise, right, Carolyn? Oh, always. I don't care what quarterback they get, Micah Parsons. He's always going to be the face. That's the way he wants it. McCarthy, you got to think you're starting to wonder if he doesn't win a playoff game, or what's his future. Anybody who runs off, Jimmy Johnson, Carolyn, I got a problem with. Whoever does that has to speak to me and explain himself, because I voted for Jimmy Johnson as a Hall of Famer. He's only got 80 wins as a coach. Andy Reid's got 250. Jimmy Johnson had 80. But the reason Jimmy Johnson is in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, he got the players. It wasn't Jerry Jones. And for that reason, he built a dynasty that was good enough. Even Barry Switzer, Carolyn, and ended up, hoisting the Vince Lombardi trophy. That tells you all you need to know about that roster. And Jerry Jones showed no appreciation. Remember that line he did at the owners' meeting, which is the reason that those two parted company. There's 200 guys out there that could have won the Super Bowl with the Cowboys. The implication was Jerry was responsible, and I don't blame Jimmy Johnson for getting upset. So there's something in the DNA of the Cowboys with Jerry Jones, and he doesn't learn the lesson. There's got to be a reason. Since '96, you haven't really done much. You got to look in the mirror once in a while.
It seems like a difficult assignment to step in there when he has done things a certain way for so long, and like you said, hasn't really gotten the results, which is disappointing to so many Cowboys fans who get excited every season and then they just end up being mediocre. What about Cincinnati, Ira? Do you think the Bengals are still alive in the AFC?
I would not give up on the Bengals. I picked them to be in the Super Bowl. I didn't realize that the quarterback's injury was as bad, that Burrow's injury was as bad. They're saying he's 100% this week. We'll see. Jamar Chase went crazy last week after bitching that he wasn't getting the ball. Another diva receiver, but that's okay. If you can back it up, I'm fine with it. I would not count out the Bengals. The Bills are playing well, no question about it. But I think Cincinnati is a very dangerous team once Burrow's 100%.
And just lastly, I refer you back to this matchup between Tampa Bay and Detroit. You mentioned Hutchinson. We touched on the run game. If Tampa is able to somehow pull this off, what would this new sort of challenge, this next statement win, mean for them and for Baker Mayfield and honestly for Todd Bowles moving forward?
Well, the fan base is already excited about 3-1. 4-1 sounds a lot better. Like I said, Atlanta's coming to Tampa next week. They're a mediocre team. The Falcons, they got their own issues at quarterback with Ritter. He might have saved his job last week, Ritter, because I think Arthur Smith was ready to make a move because I think he was losing faith in Ritter. So that was a good win for the Falcons. At 4-1, Buck Nation is going to be in a state of euphoria. Now, by the way, the creamsicle uniforms are coming out on Sunday for a game that most of the country is going to see. By the way, the game was flexed from 1 to 4:25. That's another indication that maybe the Bucs are relevant. I think it's a factor that Detroit's a good team too, but they don't flex that game, Carolyn, if the Bucs are 1-3. So it's all coming together here. The Lightning are starting. They're always a good organization. The Rays are done. So all eyes on the Bucs right now in Tampa.
It really is such a great sports town now. It's so fun to think about Tampa being relevant on a national stage in an afternoon game with the spotlight on them against Detroit. Ira Kaufman, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. And just before we let you go, remind everybody where we can find your work.
Joe Bucks fan, Carolyn. It's a website. It's not affiliated with the Bucks. We slap them around when they lose. We praise them when they win. Joe Bucks fan, 2 podcasts a week. And 2 columns a week, Carolyn, and you can find me on Twitter at iKaufman76.
It is thorough, provides a lot of analysis, and like you said, you play it straight and keep them honest. So appreciate the time, Ira. Thank you so much, and have fun this weekend.
My pleasure, Carolyn. Thanks.